right, welcome. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to this Coach's Corner with Grant Groves. I'm so excited to dive in today to your health coaching practice, your new career at the Primal Health Coach Institute, and kind of dig into everything. Before we get started, though, I wanted to let everybody know, I want to make sure that you guys know that you are welcome to ask questions as we are chatting. I've got that chat feature open, so as long as you guys can jump in, I want to make sure that, yes, attendees can chat with everyone. Perfect. So let me know where you're calling in from or where you're tuning in from. I think we've got quite a few people here, which is super exciting. Let me know where you're coming from and where you're joining from. And then we'll dive right in. I want to make sure that we can use the chat. So is that chat feature working? Awesome. Thank you, Dina from Northern Illinois, Craig from Australia, Bill from California, Lisa, awesome. Danielle from Utah, love it. Thank you so much for making sure that chat function works. All right, so now I want to invite you all to listen in, but also dive into it with questions. So if you have any questions for Grant as we are chatting, please don't hesitate. We'll pause and make sure you get those questions answered. I prefer the chat function, but if you guys would like that Q&A box, I'll keep an eye on the Q&A box as well. So either way, you can ask your questions. All those health coaching questions we have for Grant. So welcome, Grant. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Jennifer.
Good. Can you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're joining us from, and what lights you up outside of work? Let's start with that. Let's get some personal questions.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm calling in from Greenville, South Carolina. I've been here for about 5 years. I'm originally from Virginia, and my family and I are actually in the process of moving back to Virginia. So a lot of craziness going on in our life. But I'm married. I've got a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. So they keep me very busy all the time, but in a good way. Outside of work, I love going on hikes with them. I've recently gotten into bow hunting, so that's like really a cool thing I enjoy. I like paddleboarding. I think Mark Sisson kind of spurred that interest in me. So I do like to do that. I used to live on a lake, so that was a lot of fun. Love going for walks, bike rides, just doing stuff outside. I just generally enjoy that type of thing. And I'm an avid reader as well. I love reading different types of fiction and things like that. So those are some things that really excite me.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. And we talked a little bit before we started this webinar about having kids and having an opportunity, a career to work from home or a career that allows you for some flexibility. So I'm excited to kind of dive into the details of that. But I'd love to hear, how did you first get introduced to the primal health philosophy? What started your health coaching career?
Yeah, I mean, so it probably started back with my own health journey, honestly, and I think that's how a lot of them start. I was working in software sales, and I had been someone who was never like overweight, but I was just kind of, I guess you describe like just not lean or not feeling very like, I don't know, healthy, I guess. But I was doing software sales where I'd sit in front of a computer and make phone calls for 8 hours a day. I do takeout for lunch and takeout for dinner. And I actually had a fairly strict workout routine. So I'd work out 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week for like a long period of time, probably like a decade. But I was like, I'm not getting any healthier. Like, if anything, I feel like I've got like less energy than ever. And then I stumbled across like folks just kind of in like the keto space, and then one thing led to another, and I came across Mark Sisson and read the Primal Blueprint, and that like opened up my eyes, and I was like, oh wait, like it's not all about just working out. Like I got to figure out this whole diet thing too. So I changed my diet, changed the way I started working out, and then back in my I'd say mid to late 20s, I started to see a real change, and now I'm about to be 37, and I feel leaner, stronger, faster than I did, at 27. And so I'm like, all right, there's something here, and that's why I'm like really jazzed to be able to help others as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think that so many of us go through that realization of like, oh, wait, you can't out exercise this, right? Maybe for a while, maybe in my early 20s, I can get away without exercising this, but this is, and you start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, right? Like, oh, maybe it's not just the exercise that'll make me feel great and make my body feel good, right?
100%. I talk to so many folks and just friends and family, and they're like, "Oh, I got to get out from my I'm training for my half marathon, or I'm doing this jog, or I got to get to the gym." And it's like, maybe, but like, how can we talk about some other things first that might be more important? It's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So tell me about that transition. Obviously it was personal first, so you did a great job of figuring out on your own that like this makes me feel better. I discovered Mark Sisson, discovered the primal. What about the transition into making this a career for yourself?
Yeah, so as I said, I was doing software sales for, close to 15 years. And kind of during that time, I had this health transformation. And it was around, I'd say like 2020 or something like that. I had come across like the health coach certification. I was like, hey, like this was really powerful and life-changing for me. I started just with like friends and family. Like I would talk to my parents about it. I would help some close friends be like, hey, give this a try, or what about this, or read this book and stuff like that. And kind of informal coaching, I guess you could say. And they started to see some real results really quickly. And, when a lot of us were working from home during COVID and I had a little more of that time available, I was like, hey, let me get certified through Primal. It's a brand I trust. Just because I've been through it myself. And then, yeah, I got certified in 2020. And basically what I did, which is probably not uncommon for a lot of the coaches that are here, it's like I had my full-time job as a software sales. But what I did was I basically slowly built up my health coaching business on the side. So
Mhm.
I would try to get it, build my website, get a couple clients, and just slowly work on that whenever I had kind of downtime with work. And I did that for probably about 4 or 5 years. And then I got to a point with software sales, and I know it's a reason why a lot of folks pursue health coaching. It's like it's a very like intrinsically rewarding career, whereas like my software sales job, it felt like I was kind of going through the motions at a certain point. And so I had reached a point where I was like, hey, I'd save some money up and things like that. And I was like, now seems like a really good time to like make the jump. I got two young kids. I can spend time with them, but I can also work on building this coaching business. And so I took the leap of doing that about a year and a half ago now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to back up a little bit. You said you were as most of us do, right? Informally coaching friends and family as you learned it and you saw the results for yourself. I think that's when we all feel like we're okay. I'm tired. I'm going to shout it from the mountaintops, like how much this works, how well this works. And then you said you started making recommendations and they started seeing quick results. Can you tell me more about like what type of results they were seeing? Like what were you recommending that were getting them those kind of quick wins that made a difference?
Yeah, I mean, for pretty much everyone across the board, it was nutrition right away. It was just kind of getting back to some of the basics that for, a lot of us in the primal and health space are kind of obvious, honestly. But for a lot of folks, it's just kind of rethinking what you know about fat, figuring out ways to enjoy food that are primarily meat, vegetables, fruit, some nuts and seeds, things like that. And just kind of talking through some changes there and just saying, hey, like, don't focus so much on like, a lot of them are just brought up in the era of running, right? Where healthy people go for long runs. And so I was just like, hey, just try this for a little bit. Try focusing on this. Like, hey, let's touch base, every week or so, and just kind of informally, like, just see that. And even without like, again, nothing formal, nothing to where it was like, hey, this is the plan you have to stick by. But they were losing weight, they were having more energy. Those are typically some of the things that really quickly take place with pretty much anyone across the board. And so I was able to take some of those things and use that now into now when I'm doing it with paying clients is like, hey, this nutrition thing is such a core aspect of everything. I mean, people right away start feeling they do lose weight fairly quickly and their energy improves dramatically. So those are some of the quickest wins we saw.
Hmm. And how do you transition from, and you were working, friends and family, working full time, went to school, got the certification, and then building as a side hustle, right? And you did that for about 4 to 5 years. So how did you shift? And I think this is a big mindset shift for so many people from informal coaching friends and family to actually, like you said, building a website, finding clients, paying clients. Can you talk a little bit more about that detail? Because when I was a fresh coach, I wanted to kind of hone in a little bit more on like, okay, how exactly did you get clients and how exactly did you package? And what is that first scary conversation, thinking about the first time you're asking someone to pay you for these services that you've given away for free and that you love to do? It can be intimidating, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we'll get to it in a moment, kind of what I'm doing with Primal now. But it's such a common thing, right? You graduate, you're going through the certification process, you're near graduation. There's so many people that are unhealthy out there, right? You see them all the time. And you're like, hey, when I graduate, people are going to be like banging down my door, throwing money at me. And it's like, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. It's like it really does require effort. For me, what was really helpful for me is like, hey, I with my focus with clients, kind of my niche is I work with men in their 30s and 40s. Often they could be dads of young kids. They're working kind of high stress, high paying desk jobs in finance, technology, sales. It's the world I come from, so I can relate to them very well. And so basically, I've got a whole network of LinkedIn folks who I had worked with or connections and things like that. And so that's kind of where I started. It was like, hey, this is where I know the most number of people. So I just started reaching out to people that way, having conversations. And I think it can help, when you start with, it doesn't need to be your inner circle, right? But even just people that know you, they're like, hey, I know he's an honest person who works hard. And without asking, even if it's so early on, like without needing to ask for a ton of references and things like that, they trust you. And that's really valuable because then I'm able to, give it my all, help a couple of these guys who I have known, who I knew at one point in time, and they were able to get dramatic results. And then all of a sudden, hey, I've got a real paying customer, a testimonial here, a guy who's lost 30 pounds, who's feeling great, who's feeling like a renewed like father. And it's like that was like a huge like changing point for me, being able to say, hey, like I'm not, it kind of removes a little bit of that imposter syndrome.
I love that. Yeah, that feels so organic too. It feels like you said, you're starting with the people that you know the best, and what you described as your avatar, right? Your niche is exactly you. However many years ago when you started your journey, so like you said, you can relate to them. Is that so? My brain's going in a couple different directions there. Uh, that is still your client, right? Is that still your primary avatar?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's like I think like a lot of coaches that I talk to as well, it's like I think I started out kind of a really broad
Mm.
like, hey, I want to, because you talk to so many people and you see so many people in different stages of life, right? Like men and women, older folks, younger folks, and you're like, hey, I want to help all of them. The problem is though, it's like what I found kind of the hard way is like when you're trying to help, you can't be everything to everyone, right? And
Mhm.
so this is a conversation I have with a lot of coaches today. It's like, hey, more often than not, being more narrow in your approach and being specific and who you help can really you're going to be more clear in your marketing and you're going to talk to a specific problem because now when I talk to the tired dad who's got two young kids who just barely has any time and can't process the idea of like working out, it's like, hey, I get that. My messaging is coming to that person because like I know what that's like. It's like, hey, how can we be really efficient with our time and our workout so that you get the most bang for your buck, right? And so I think that was kind of that's kind of the evolution that I've taken. It was like this wide group to now, hey, I'm like really trying to narrow in on guys in their 30s and 40s working certain jobs in certain family situations.
Yeah, and do you feel that I mean, it's just so much easier to talk to them in a way that lands because you're able to do it in an authentic way. Do you ever have a fear of running out of clients with a really narrow niche?
No, I mean, I think that, it's funny, right? If you're ever worried about that, you can just like, even just using like ChatGPT, right? Hey, give me an estimate of like this people in, if you're in the US, right? Or wherever country you're in or area you're in, like, I work with a lot of folks virtually too. So,
Mhm.
but I just did like a quick number and it's like, I mean, you start to realize like there's a lot of people that fit your target market, even if you think it's like pretty small. So, the answer is no. It's the limitations really on me and my marketing approach is the biggest
Mm.
limitation.
I think that's so huge. I think that's perfect because I think that's something that a lot of people are nervous about. It's too specific, it's too narrow. How am I going to help just these people? I need to widen this up. But to your point, and like I love that Chat GPT recommendation. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Chat GPT, and I think I call it the world's smartest assistant because it can really help with so many things. So what a cool way to use it to be able to say, hey, this is the niche I'm thinking about, or this is the niche I want to dive into. How many people are in this demographic?
Mhm.
Very cool. Okay, so tell me, you mentioned the transition from your full-time job to being able to kind of pull the trigger and do health coaching. And I want to talk a little bit about that. One thing that you said that I wrote down was it's intrinsically rewarding. So I would love to hear what you find intrinsically rewarding specifically about health coaching that allowed you to make that big decision to leave a full-time job and do this to build your practice. I think it's admirable.
Yeah, I think, I was kind of fortunate in a way where, I kind of did the corporate grind for 15 years and I tried to be really smart financially so I could save some money so that I knew at a certain point, right, like I wanted to do something that was really meaningful. And like, it's just that, I think at a certain point I was kind of going through the motions a lot with my corporate job. And so when I started doing health coaching and I started seeing the impact that it had on people's lives to where it's like, hey, I now, clients telling me like, hey, I now have the energy to play with my kids. Like I'm not laying on the couch with them
Mm.
anymore. Or like, hey, you know what? Like I lost 30, 40 pounds and I feel so much more confident going into client meetings now. It's just conversations like that. And it's like one of the other powerful ones is a lot of my clients and the guys I work with, like their parents are at an age now where they are developing chronic disease or really suffering from certain health issues, whether it be, diabetes or heart disease, or some of them unfortunately have even lost their parents, right? And they're like, hey, I want to be around to be around for my kids when they're getting married or for my grandkids, right? And so, one of the things that really resonates with my guys is like, hey, we're playing a long game here. Like we're here so you can be like the lean, fit grandfather who's like throwing their grandkid up in the air, right? And like that strikes a chord with them because it's like, hey, it's not just trying to get the six pack. It's not just, trying to be strong right now. It's like, hey, we're here so you can like be like live a long, fulfilling life and be there for people that matter. And I think when we have those conversations, that like really hits home for me and them.
Yeah, that's that. Well, I can hear the passion in your voice. I can tell this is something that really resonates with you. And that's very cool to be able to, again, say that you are working with a demographic in which that message, that why, is really important to them. You can paint that picture and you can make it much bigger than themselves. I think that's very, very cool. That really, I think, helps with what probably retaining clients with making sure that they are getting the value to continue working with you for a long time. Um, I want to ask, kind of again, backing up just a little bit, what advice do you have for health coaches who are trying to build their business part-time and are not at the point where they can quit their full-time job? What would they, in their limited time and maybe resources, what should they focus on in order to build that business outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and frankly, like, I think it's a great approach is to keep your full-time job for I think very rarely do you have the stories of people that are like, hey, I graduated and like I've got this flourishing, I've got like all these clients ready to go. It's like that's just not reality. Like most of the time, it takes time to build up this base because there's so much that goes into building a coaching business, right? And so typically there are some like kind of what I call like easy wins, right? It's like figuring out it's setting up a website, right? And it's like, we've got, Primal's got services now that make this like way easier than when I was like graduating. So it's like, that's an easy win because you got to have a website these days, but you can do that on the side. Programming, right? You can start to think about how you're going to think about programming. And like if someone signs up with you, like what are you going to walk them through? So website programming are a couple things. And then even, small thing like again, I wish I had it when I was graduating, but like the health coach client blueprint that we just launched, right? It's something that like you can do while you're still doing a full-time job, but it's like starts putting the pieces together from like, hey, what's your strategy from a marketing standpoint? How are you going to go about this? So there's a lot of things you can do on the side. And then even when you get those first couple of clients, more often than not, people have the bandwidth to be able to take those clients on while still having their full-time job. And so you can actually like start to build this experience, work with those folks and things like that. And so they can really run in parallel.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Okay, easy wins, website, programming, the health coach client blueprint. It does sound these are all things that Primal has in place to kind of help. I agree that these things would have been amazing when I was starting out as well to have such guided uh, um, blueprints and clear steps to take. Um, I remember when I was starting out, um, I got into quite a few chicken and egg scenarios, and maybe you can walk through this. So I would get stuck on I need a program to take a client through,
Yeah.
but I need a client to know how to build a program. So can you talk a little bit into your programming and what you recommend there?
Yeah, and I think this is a really common conversation I have with a lot of folks, and I know I went through it too. It's so a common trap is that you feel like you need to have everything perfect before you can then start saying, "Hey, I'm ready to go," and like send a message to someone or start this outreach. And I think that I don't think that's a good approach because ultimately it's like nothing's going to be, it's never going to be perfect, right? The website could always be tweaked a little bit. Your programming is going to change. I guarantee it. Um, and so it's like, I think the difference more often than not between like successful coaches and coaches that aren't successful are those that say, hey, you know what? I feel like I've got the bones of this in place. I've got the gist of it. But at a certain point, you are going to be kind of like building the plane as you fly it. And I think that's just like a reality that needs to be faced. It's like getting that first client is going to force you to get your programming tighter. It's going to force you to see discrepancies in your pricing. It's going to force you to basically like solve some of these things that only can be done through client interactions. And so that's one of those things that when I talk to coaches all the time, it's like don't be afraid to take that next step to get that client to try to do that because it's like if you're waiting to get everything perfect, 6 months, 12 months, a year go by, and you'd be amazed, even if you'd had two, three, four clients by then, the experiences you've had and would have learned from that would be invaluable.
That's so good. And I want to, in a moment, I'm going to dive into your role at Primal. But the next question I have for you is what advice would you give people who do pull the trigger and quit their full-time job? So we talked about the easy wins, but now we're talking about somebody who is like, okay, I am going all in. What is their step number one? I imagine that when you find yourself with an 8-hour day that you can dedicate to building your coaching practice. You probably already have, like you said, you probably already built a part-time practice. So how do you get from part-time to full-time when you are deciding to kind of pull that trigger and put all your eggs in that health coaching basket?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so, from my perspective, right? Like the way I look at it personally is like for me, it's still part-time. So I do part-time and I do part-time with the Primal Health Coach Institute. So, I may not be the best person, but, just with my experience in health coaching, what I would say would be a good approach was just really having a strategy going into it. And making sure that, like you said, like 8 hours is a lot of time. There's a lot that can be done, but figuring out like, hey, what is like the busy work that's like, hey, I need to refine my website a little bit more. I need to tweak this, tweak that, versus like, hey, what am I doing that's like client generating activity? Because I think that's where you're gonna get the most return. It's the hardest thing to do, but it's the thing that like you have to do. So I would say like that should be where most of your time is being committed because ultimately it's that trap that you fall into of like, hey, what am I wasting my time on? That's like maybe not really adding value versus like having discovery calls, having those conversations, because that's ultimately what's going to translate into paying clients, which is going to get your business off the ground.
I can tell you from experience that I made myself busy with things that were not moving the needle. I can't tell you how many times I tweaked my website and how many times I played around with logos and Canva and had fun with those things because they were fun and they kept me from the hard work. Right. I could pretend like I was being very busy and I was doing something for my business when in actuality I was not doing anything to generate clients. But I think that was my uh, I don't know. I wouldn't say self-sabotage, but it was my fear of um, taking that big scary step. So that's
Exactly. And
really good advice.
yeah, and you think, that hey, like if my logo is just a little bit nicer or whatever, it's like that's going to be the thing that gets someone to sign. It's like, unfortunately, it probably doesn't matter, to be honest with you.
It's so true. Well, and for me too, it was the opposite. It was like if my logo, my business doesn't look professional enough, then they're going to see right through me, right? They're going to
Mhm.
see that this is an amateur act. They're going to see that I'm brand new. They're going to see that I put together a website on my own and I'm not professional enough, which is also just such a limiting belief that it keeps you paralyzed if you let it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, tell us about Primal. So, you are the health coach development advisor. Tell me what that is, what that entails, what your day to day is.
Yeah, so this is a really cool role. I get to work with our graduates and folks that are in our ecosystem that are basically, trying to figure out what their next step is, right? And so I work with our new coaches who had just graduated and are saying, hey, how do I approach this client generation? I need help with the website, I need help with programming, things like that. But I also work with our coaches who maybe been doing it for a little bit longer, but they have different challenges. So maybe they need a little more confidence with their coaching ability, or they want to really kind of further their expertise in a given specialization, like, diving into the gut more. So I got to basically support them in different areas. I always tell them like I am not the end all be all. I don't know all the answers, but we've got, at Primal, what I really respect is, we built a really like an ecosystem because a lot of our coaches have seen it. You can go get certified in a lot of different places for a lot of different things. But very rarely do you have an organization that wants to really see you succeed. And that's what Primal's doing, is to build this ecosystem of resources so that, hey, not only are you going to get certified as a coach, but we want to see you succeed as a coach. So what's your problem? We've got a solution for it. And it's my job to be able to, hey, look at these resources to help you get there.
That's incredible. What a fantastic resource for people to have, for graduates to have. So, tell me about those resources. What types of like, what are your, I guess, okay, let me rephrase. You mentioned mapping out a coaching path. So what does that look like and how do you walk through that with someone who graduated?
Yeah, so it kind of all starts from them and kind of what their goals are, right? We've got some folks that are saying, "Hey, I want to run my own practice, right? I want to be my own boss, and so I'm going to start from the ground up and do that." And so they may have a business name, they might have some of the legal stuff in order, but they're saying, "Hey, you know what? I need to get the website in place. Like, what are some resources you recommend, right?" So that's a very common one. And a lot of times we'll talk about, hey, just figuring out, a lot of folks will try to figure out, hey, how do I get clients on my own? And, like a lot of folks, me included, I've been there. It's like, it can be hard. And so that's where it's like, what we're doing with Amber Shaw and the Health Coach Client Blueprint has been really interesting conversations with folks that are really excited about, because you kind of have a business coach in your corner, right? Helping you, giving you ideas and suggestions on how to really approach this marketing thing and do it in a step-by-step kind of methodical way. So those are some of the areas that we'll talk about. But I also talk to folks who are saying, "Hey, I want to join a company, right? I want to be a health coach for a company." And so we just kind of talk through ways to make them more marketable, make sure they've got the right certifications in place and things like that. And then we got other folks that want to partner with medical practices, and so their dream job is to be working alongside like a functional doctor, right? So there's a lot of different paths that a health coach can take, and that's one of the beauties of it, is there's a lot of freedom that comes with this job. But on the flip side of that, with that freedom comes a lot of choices and a lot of things that you can choose to do it yourself. You can choose to leverage resources that we have or other organizations have, and so that's kind of what it means to kind of map it out. And I kind of just love to hear from them that what's top of mind for them, what's their challenge, and then hey, here, look here and consider this.
That is so true. That analysis paralysis is very real when you have too many choices and they all seem exciting. That's really wonderful to provide that clarity. So can we dig in a little bit more to kind of exactly what that looks like? Let's say, like, first of all, how do I sign up to work with you with Primal? I'm a Primal graduate. What is step one to getting a conversation with you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm reached at my email is advisor@primalhealthcoach.com. So I reach out to a lot of our graduates, but you can book a call with me on our website as well. So easy I just do free 30-minute strategy sessions to talk through any of these things. So that's the first step. And then yeah, we'll just kind of talk through things. And again, conversations vary based on goals and where people are at, but really I like to just hone in on, we're not going to solve it all right away, but it's really all about that next step. And it's kind of the thing that I've done in my own career. It's like, hey, you don't go from, just graduating to having this like flourishing coaching business, right? You have to take these small incremental steps. And so we just kind of break it down a little bit and say, hey, like, where are you at? Some people, they're like, hey, I don't really have a business name yet, or I don't have my legal paperwork. Okay. It's like, hey, let me point you in the right direction to get those resources. These are some things you're going to need before we even get to building a website, right? Some people have said, hey, I need help with a website and I've got resources to point them there. And others say, hey, I've got my website set up, but then I don't really know, programs and how do I really think about that? And so we'll talk about their target market, who they're going after. And so we just bounce off a lot of ideas off of each other. And again, sometimes I'm just a sounding board for some folks where they're like, they've got all the pieces and the foundation. They just want someone to talk through it. And that's what I'm here for. And other folks are like, hey, I've got a specific challenge with like, um, I'm just not feeling confident in my coaching sessions. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about some resources we can to help get you really confident and get you that real world practice you need to be better in your coaching sessions.
Cool. That is incredible. Man, again, I keep thinking about if I had had this when I started, it would be a game changer, big time. So what's that next step? I said 30-minute discovery session. And then
Mhm.
let's say, yes, I'd like this was the best 30 minutes of my life. I can see where I need this on a regular basis. Talk to me about the next step. And you mentioned the health coach client blueprint. How does that factor into your job and what you do for graduates?
Yeah, so I mean, the single most common challenge we hear from folks is just how do I get that for those first, let's say five, maybe 10 paying clients, right? And that's where that analysis paralysis really comes into play. And so really what we do is I kind of share a little bit about the program. There's a webinar that Amber did on the Coach's Corner, which she talked a lot about this. So I share that a lot with folks to get an idea. But basically, it being a 6-month virtual mentorship where they get this kind of coach in their corner for 6 months. And so, I'll typically provide the resources to help them understand kind of what that investment looks like and if it makes sense for their situation and things like that. And more often than not, depending on where they're at in their journey, it can be a really, really big help. But my goal as the health coach development advisor is to basically kind of stay alongside them throughout this journey. So, once they overcome one thing, I love to kind of check in with them to see how things are going. Some folks, we'll touch base on a monthly basis. Others, it's like, hey, we have one call and they may not need resources from me for a while, but my goal is to still be here and support them. So it just kind of depends on the person and where they're at. And we kind of take a personalized approach to support them on a kind of as needed basis.
Wow, that's fantastic. Awesome, awesome. Well, Craig has a great question. He says, I'm thinking an approach to transition from full-time work to coaching would entail productization of our services like online challenges, training that clients can buy and follow at their own pace with low touch, low time, demand on ourselves. Thoughts? This is a great question. So this to me talks to programming and can you talk into like the options of having kind of a little bit of a hands-off approach to programming and so that you can have that like I said low time demand on the actual coach.
Yeah, so it's something that our this is where like Primal Pro can be super helpful for those that folks that don't know about it, it's basically like our done for you programs that's built within like an app ecosystem, so you can choose between Practice Better or Coach Catalyst. And so this is a way that to Craig's question that some folks do is that you can basically kind of create these kind of programs that they've already been Primal's already uploaded all of our stuff in it. So there's all these programs pre-built in them that you can then basically package and basically sell to clients. So it's a very low lift way to do things, to get some revenue and kind of help them without a ton of time and resource commitment. So that's one avenue to take. Candidly, like it's not my approach for how I run my coaching business. Mine's more of much just based on my clientele, my target market. Mine's much more of like a high touch personalization approach. So it's just a different approach. One's not right or wrong, right? You get people that are successful in both avenues. It just kind of depends about what your goals are.
Yeah, I wonder, uh, I feel like it would be very, very viable to take kind of both approach, right? Like maybe have a lower tier programming that's hands off, and then that higher touch, higher tier programming that is that very hands on. You could take fewer clients that way.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's coaches that do both. There's some that focus on one or the other. And that's the beauty of the health coaching role in and of itself is you have the freedom to kind of choose, right? You're doing a full-time job, Craig. Like you might not have the bandwidth to be able to take, client calls during the workday. So that kind of like asynchronous program that they can do on their own time is like extremely valuable, right? So that can definitely make sense. It just kind of depends on what your goals are.
Hmm. Awesome. Great, really great question, Craig. And if anybody else has any questions, please feel free. This is a perfect time to pick Grant's brain. Um, for anybody who maybe, have you worked yet with anybody who is a little bit farther along and feeling maybe a plateau, maybe feeling stuck that they need to take up that next level?
Yeah, it's definitely that's definitely a pretty common conversation we have. I think that a part of that, a lot of it does come down to the marketing side of things. I think marketing and kind of the sales side of this, it can be a really tough nut to crack for people, right? And it's like because I actually come from a sales background, so it's a little more natural for me. But for a lot of folks, they're like, hey, I feel like a used car salesman. Like, this just doesn't feel natural, Like, once they expand outside of their network, or there are people that know them, they're like kind of really scratching their heads and where to go next. So, I think that's where like having some type of like real marketing strategy in place. I talk to some folks that hire marketing firms, and they're saying, hey, like I'll help with lead generation and things like that. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't go well, right? But I think where the best bang for their buck is, again, that health coach client blueprint, I think is gold in this situation. And like as a health coach starting out, like I actually just enrolled myself in it actually just to like learn more about it because I've heard so much about what Amber's talking about that, even as somebody who's been coaching for 4 or 5 years, like I think I know that there are some really good nuggets in there that I could leverage because I'm not a social media guy. Like I don't use it much personally. So for me, it's like really unnatural. But I know the way that Amber positions it is like, hey, it doesn't need to be unnatural if you just do what your strengths are and you can kind of do this in a low lift way. So, I think for those folks that have been doing it for a while and still kind of feeling that plateau, that it's like it comes around like what's that sustainable marketing strategy that fits your style and your strengths. And I think that's like the big thing that we try to hone in on.
Yeah, and for those people who, like you said, I talk to tons and tons of health coaches who that is the number one reason why they don't feel that they can do it on their own is marketing and sales, marketing and sales. And then you mentioned outsourcing that. That makes sense. So if it's something that you don't feel that you can get yourself to the next level on, that could be an option to outsource. Do you recommend? Tell me about what your advice for what should be outsourced versus what should be taken on your own. I know that we all kind of also think about um I can pull myself up by my bootstraps. I can do this, but at what point do you feel it's wiser to outsource?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the person, right? So I think like just a personal example, right? Like I come from a background in sales and reaching out to people and like starting off those like kind of colder conversations. So for me to reach out to folks on LinkedIn or just kind of like more, through a more, it may not be cold outreach, but doing that outreach comes more naturally to me because I have that background and that skill set. For someone else, that might be like a really challenging avenue. And so, that might not work well for them. Whereas like I'm really bad at social media. And so, for example, like I know some coaches who they are just more natural talking on social media and being authentic. Because I think, with social media, it seems like there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of like, hey, like what just stops someone from scrolling, right? But if you're able to be like really authentic and talk to like specific problems and do that well on social media, that can be a really powerful tool that you use. And so I think it's really kind of person dependent on what you choose to outsource and not. For people that are not good with it, like maybe leveraging someone who does social media could be like a really good use of your time and money is to like leverage a social media marketing person. I've been there before. I've tried that avenue as well, and that's been helpful to get my kind of social media presence off the ground. So I think that's one avenue. Same thing with like website building, right? Like some people have got the IT skills and the wherewithal to be able to throw up a website pretty quickly and easily. Awesome. If not, like leverage a service for that because I've talked to too many coaches who are like, Grant, I spent months and I'm spending way too much time on trying to how to figure out how to embed this photo with this and it looks terrible on mobile. Like, what am I doing? And it's like, yeah, because this is not your skill set, right? Like, let's just get you to coaching more. How do we figure that out? So I do think there is this like pride that has to be set aside and be like, hey, what are you good at? Figure out where you can focus and put those chips, and then what are you not good at? And say, hey, like I'm willing to invest money to get me better at those things.
Such good advice. I remember getting so frustrated with social media. I'm like, but I'm not health coaching. This is not what I'm good at.
Yeah.
Craig would love you to expand on Primal Pro and is wondering if there's a demo site that they can explore.
Yeah, so we can I can definitely there if you go on our YouTube channel on the Primal Health Coach Institute YouTube channel, there is a and if you just search Primal Pro, you'll see at least two or three videos that go into detail about what it is and things like that. But the gist of it is that there are two of the most common coaching apps out there. There's Practice Better and Coach Catalyst. Basically, what we've done at Primal is we've preloaded a ton of the Primal content into those apps. And so where this is really powerful is that this app you can brand it, get your own branding and stuff like that. So it just looks super slick. It's kind of like a product that you're able to deliver to your clients. Um, it's got built-in messaging. It's got brand neutral exercise videos. It's got nutrition information. It's got pretty much anything you'd need from an app standpoint. It's already in there, and so it's a really like slick experience for your clients because they get to say, hey, Craig's got a branded app that he can do you could basically coach from it if you wanted to with just that. So it really helps with a lot of our new coaches who are kind of having that imposter syndrome of like, hey, how do I justify this cost? Well, it's like, hey, you're automatically providing them a product now that they can like see, touch, feel, and that can be a really powerful thing for your confidence and for your clients' confidence to sign up with you.
Yeah, that's an incredible, incredible resource. Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And yeah, Dina, Coach Catalyst and Practice Better are the two apps that Primal Pro are loaded into. Kimberly has a great question, kind of shifting gears a little bit. What are some examples of ways that Primal Health coaches can have supported mental health concerns for clients?
So this is a little bit of a tough one because there's like kind of these swim lanes that you want to stay in, right? As like a health coach and what you can and can't do. So, my best advice is basically like, I think that like there's definitely a place for people to that need the support from like a mental health standpoint. And so I think it's just being clear on like what your certification gets you and like so just from my personal experiences because that's what I can talk from. It's like I don't dive too much into that at all because that's just not my swim lane. Like I try to really stay focused on like the nutrition, the food, the lifestyle aspects of things. As a health coach and when you're doing these sessions, like it can very easily drift into a lot more of that. And so my advice is just like as much as possible, I try to just stay in the swim lane just because like you open yourself up to liability things as you start kind of venturing into those things without the proper certification and things like that. So that's kind of what I would say when it comes to like mental health.
Yeah, I'd say have a good referral network ready for
Yes.
to refer out to the people who feel like it's out of your scope of practice, right? Okay, Greg says, what awesome advice from Kimberly. What response do you get from LinkedIn networking? I assume it's a good marketing channel given the pool of professionals who can afford discretionary coaching services.
Yeah, so for me, right, again, and this kind of it's person to person, right, based on I guess coach to coach, right, depending on what your target audience is, right? Like I know my target audience, they spend a lot of time on LinkedIn because that's they use it for their jobs for a lot of things. So for me, it makes sense to go out there and send messages that way because they're checking it regularly. It's a source of where they look for financial opportunities and things like that. And so for me to reach out that way, it was also it's so I have such a greater network there than I do in my cell phone, right? Or, for me, like I'm not using Facebook or things like that personally much. So my network there is a lot smaller, whereas this network was a lot larger. So the response was generally pretty positive because again, this are kind of the folks they're working those jobs. They're kind of the exact folks I want to be reaching out to and things like that. So generally speaking, it has been by far the best response I've gotten on any platform, but that would make sense given my target audience.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Great question, Craig. So, okay, so we talked about LinkedIn, we talked about social media, and if you're comfortable with that, if that's something that you feel natural doing, um, do you feel that there are any additional, maybe underrated or overlooked opportunities in the health coaching world that could really, or in the industry that could really help a coach kind of get started or find clients?
I think, the interesting thing is like, I think it kind of goes back to like finding your niche, right? And like looking at your personal story, because I think that there are a lot of people out there that are going to Google looking for help for certain things. And I mean, you name it, right? Like A to Z, there are people that are looking for help for something. And so I think, is there like a certain golden one that's out there? Possibly, but I think my better advice or suggestion would be like, don't be afraid to be specific about helping solve a specific challenge or issue that people are having, because there are a lot of people out there that are looking for that expert help. And I think the more you can kind of position yourself as an expert in that, especially if you're leveraging from a personal health story or folks you've helped, I think there's a lot of power there. And it's like, you don't need, depending on your coaching model, right? Like you don't need, 50 clients at one time or 100 clients at one time. Like, depending on what your model is, like, if you're only handling 10 or 15 clients at a time, whatever that might be, you start to realize like it would take you a long time to get through that market out there of folks, that addressable market. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice is like, don't be afraid to get specific about the problem you're solving, because I think there's more people out there trying to solve that or trying to get a solution for that than you may realize.
Such good advice. Really, really good. Awesome. All right. What is one challenge that you are currently facing in your health coaching career?
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is like, I've kind of expanded through this. For me, I want to get better at get it. I want to figure out the marketing thing better, honestly. And so that's the reason why I signed myself up for the Health Coach Client Blueprint is like I've tapped out a lot of my network, my LinkedIn folks and stuff like that. I want to start doing this in a more scalable way. Especially with like, kind of doing two part-time jobs and helping out with like little kids and stuff like that. Like I want to be efficient with my outreach time, but doing it in a way that's authentic and scalable. And so I think for me, that's my biggest thing is like, I want to figure out how to kind of up my client count a little bit more and figure out how to way to make that a little more sustainable. That's really the what's front and center for me. I'm feeling good about my like the coaching ability and like the results and things like that. I think it's just exposure and making sure that messaging is getting to my target audience is want to get enough at bats there.
Yeah. So, okay. So, looking forward 1 years, 5 years, what are your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I'd lie to you if I had like a 5-year goal right now, honestly. But I think for me, right, is like I'd love to get my coaching practice, get a few more clients to where it's feeling a little more, just a little bit bigger. I still don't know if I want it to be like a full-time thing, quote unquote, right now, just given to the stage of life I am and kind of the value I have right now, spending my time with my family and my young kids. But honestly, I think something long term would be really cool. I'd love to be able to like open up some type of like primal whether it's a gym, whether it's a primal fitness thing, from some type of like thing that community, right? That brings people together that, they can work out a little bit, but also kind of build this community of like-minded folks who are just trying to like live healthier lifestyles without like, I think CrossFit can be good, but like without the CrossFit intensity, right? So I think that's something I toy around with some days, like being able to have this kind of like primal community in the community I'm in.
What a great vision. That's fantastic. Awesome. All right. Well, Craig has another question. Craig's got great questions. Lessons on pricing. How do you set a price that demonstrates value for money and attracts the right clients? Have you ever had any direct feedback that caused you to alter your pricing?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I think through the Primal Health Coach, I think the business section, right, you get some suggestions on like kind of price points and things like that. I think I went out of the gate way at too low of a cost. And I was able to get some clients that way, which was really valuable for me in regards to testimonials and things like that. So, I think if you have to like, I think there can be good that comes from that, but I had a guy who, and again, the pricing as a whole, right? It varies a lot based on your demographic, where you live, the folks you're working with. So it's like, I don't have like here's what you should charge, right? It just varies so much. So this is something I would try leveraging ChatGPT for. Again, be really specific. What's your target audience? Where do you live? Who are you going after? How much revenue are you trying to make per month, right? Put all of that stuff in there to then help kind of figure out what that pricing model would be and help test things out. But from personal experience, I had a client who, when his final session with me, he said, he's like, hey, Grant, if you would have told me, this guy's a father of three little kids, in the DC metro area. And he was like, if you would have told me that after 6 months of working with you, I'd be down 40 pounds, I'd have more energy, and I'd be sleeping better, and I'd feel so much better. He's like, I would have paid you, well over $10,000 for that service, if not more. And it's like, and he was like, so he's like, what I'm saying is like, I think you're like undercutting yourself from a price standpoint, just on the value you're providing. And for me, that was a big like, whoa, like, okay, and I get it, like it's hindsight. He's able to see the results. So, everyone can't just be like, hey, I'm willing to put down that type of money. But I think it shows the value is there when you're really helping people transform their lives. A lot of people would put a lot of money towards that because it's genuinely life changing.
So how do you, because this is something that almost every single person I interview gives that advice, which is the most of us are charging too low prices, too little right at the gate. How do you that is an incredible story, and talk about like, all right, you've got confirmation now straight from a client's mouth that this is worth this. How do you fake it till you make it when you are not yet there and you don't have that social proof that what you're doing is getting people results?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, just from my experience, like I did have a lower price point to start, right? And like for good or bad, I was able to get some clients that way because they didn't look at it as a huge investment. And so I think that there is that advice of like, hey, you need to charge more, but I also think you have to kind of do that as your experience increases. And so, I don't want you to feel like, yes, there's a certain price point where you go too low and it's like they're not going to be committed. And so, there's a certain price point where it just doesn't make sense. But I think actually being a little bit lower when you're starting out is not a terrible thing because you get people that price is not the objection. You get to really commit it all. And you have to know, right, when you're going through it that like, hey, you're not going to, your profit margin might not be through the roof right now, but it's like, that's not what you're doing right now. Right now, what you're doing is building experience. You're learning how to coach. You're learning how to get results for folks. You're building a referral network and testimonials, which is going to be super valuable for you as your prices increase. And so that's kind of the approach I take.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Nice. Yeah, love that story. Happy client. Oh, love happy client stories. That's great. Awesome. Okay, AI. What is Primal's viewpoint on AI? Sounds like it's an aid in many ways, but conversely could be a threat. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't really look at it as a threat. It's the same type of thing with the internet, right? Like I would say that, I tell a lot of my clients, right? Like for the most part, I'm not going to be teaching you anything that you can't go look up online right now. Like you have the whole world at your fingertips. Like you want to go learn about Primal, go online. You'll find it. You read a book. Like it's all out there. And I think the same thing's relevant for AI. Like you want like leverage AI. You should. There's so much out there that can be helpful. I think the value for the coaching comes, it's like that human aspect, it's the relatability, it's the accountability, and it's being able to help someone do it in like a kind of step-by-step habit building process. And I think that, as good as AI is, I don't think it can do that right now. And so, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, who knows, right? Like, but right now I can tell you it's that like it doesn't have the ability to have those genuine conversations where you can connect with another person and say, hey, I get what it's like when you have a newborn and you know what, you're struggling with sleep and like you just want to order the pizza. Like, I know, I've been there. You know what I mean? Like, I can empathize. And so it's like that human aspect from a coaching standpoint, people are coming to you. You've probably heard it before. People aren't coming to you for your knowledge as much as they are for like helping them build healthy and sustainable habits and kind of walking with them on that path. That's what makes you different as a coach than someone who's just regurgitating information.
That is so good. And that is what, to me, when I went through the master course, the advanced course, and did the board certification, that's where that clicked for me as well. Prior to that, I felt like I was regurgitating information. I was like, well, I just have to teach. I just got to teach the information. And then learning how to actually coach was what made that big. I think that's such good advice, that you have remembering that the internet is full of all the information. There's nothing that you can't find on your own. The difference is being able to coach people through it. I love that. Love that. Craig, we love your questions. They've been really, really great. So thank you. All right. To wrap this up, Grant, again, one more time, tell us how to connect with you, and how to get one of those 30-minute discovery calls.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just reaching out advisor@primalhealthcoach.com. And then, yeah, we can connect that way to set up some time and do a strategy session. Love to do that with anyone.
Awesome. And since you have so much knowledge around people who are building their business, who are graduating, you're guiding them through all of these first steps. What would you say? What would you like to leave as the number one piece of advice that you can give, that if people walked away, they remember this one thing?
I'd say just take that next step for your business. Like don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. Because just get out there, just try it, have the conversation, do the discovery call, put yourself out there, make the post. Because like ultimately it's the experience that matters. It's like you're never gonna have all the ducks in a row. Just get out there, do it. That's how you get the ball moving.
Do the thing. I love it. Well, so nice to talk to you today, Grant. What a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks everyone for attending.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great day.
Bye.